What's good in the YouTube hood? It's your girl Luna Nova, and I am back with another video for you guys. Today we are going to continue to go down the folklore rabbit hole and get into Latin folklore. So if you haven't watched my other videos, definitely go back and watch them because you're in for a treat. Today we are going to go over 10 different Latin folklore myths and stories. The first folklore story that we are going to go ahead and get into in Latin culture is going to be the very well-known La Llorona. And if I said that wrong, please politely correct me in the comments. For those of you who don't know who La Llorona is the story of a beautiful woman who was in Mexico, the most beautiful woman in her village, who wound up coming across a male suitor that matched her in beauty and elegance. They fell in love, wound up having kids, until one day his womanizing ways caught up with him. La Llorona is a very malevolent spirit who wanders and haunts bodies of water, looking for her children that she drowned in a jealous fit of rage.
A long, long time ago, there lived a woman named Maria. She was the most beautiful woman in all of Mexico, and she knew it. Day after day, male suitors begged her for her hand in romance. But day after day, men returned home defeated. One day, a dashing young gentleman galloped into town and turned Maria's life upside down. She knew in an instant that she had to have him, for he was the only man to match her in beauty and in elegance. Soon they were to be wed, and not long after had 2 sons. This delight, however, was short-lived. For one damning day, the dashing gentleman became grotesque as he rode into town with another woman at his side. He rode up to Maria and pledged his life to this new woman he barely met, because his current wife was no longer beautiful. Maria was devastatingly heartbroken. That night, in a fit of sorrow and anger, Maria decided to inflict the same agony toward the man that bestowed it upon her. Maria woke her 2 boys up, took their hands and guided them to the river for a bath. Hand in hand, the 3 figures immersed themselves in the water, but under their mother's hand, the little boys never came up for air. After the blood-red glare of fury faded from sight, Maria realized what she had done. She shrieked from the gallows of her soul before letting the river water fill up her lungs. It is said now this weeping woman, or La Llorona, has returned from the afterlife, searching for new children to claim as her own for all eternity.
This is La Llorona. La Llorona originated in Mexico, but she is known all across Latino America. La Llorona translates to the weeping woman because she drowned her children one by one in a river, and she roams around at night as a ghost asking people, ¿Dónde están mis hijos? Where are my children? If La Llorona approaches you asking you where her children are, it is very important that you say this: Enséñame esas nalgas jugosas, mami. It is an ancient chant that will protect you. Stay safe, guys.
Because I was going to go ahead and make this video, I decided to go ahead and watch the movie from 2019 about the curse of La Llorona. And let me just say, I don't know if I necessarily liked it, only because it did not stick to the folklore. It did not completely stick to the folklore, let me say that. Because for the most part, it did stick to the folklore as far as introducing her in the movie, but it didn't stick to it all around. There were certain parts of the movie where I was just like, that isn't even close to the folklore. But then again, everything is dramatized for Hollywood. What can you do? The next story we are going to get into is La Tunda. This Colombian folklore is about a woman who is a shapeshifter who lures men into the woods. There are a plethora of stories about La Tunda that range throughout the Latin diaspora. So if you know about La Tunda outside of Colombia, leave it in the comments. Again, I am going to be creating a map of the different folklore stories and creatures that I have currently and will go over in the future. And again, I would love to make a map. So again, if you know of any of these stories or myths that are in your area that don't originate from where I've done my research to find them, please leave it in the comments. Let's create a map. Let's get it together as a community.
If you run into me, I'll snatch you back to my lair and transform you into my servant. Hey there, I'm La Tunda, hiding deep in the forests of Colombia. For centuries, Locals have dubbed me the shape-shifting monster because I can morph into a beautiful woman to seduce and capture lonely travelers. However, my true form is far from that. Once they're lured in and try to get close to me, I reveal my real face and drag them into my nest, making them my servants, ensuring they can't escape. I usually show only one foot because my other foot is a wooden one that can't transform to look like a human's. This is one of the unmistakable features that I can't completely hide, and it makes strange noises when I walk, which some travelers recognize, allowing them to flee from my grasp. So, if you're a traveler trespassing into these parts and see a woman with only one foot exposed deep in the forest, she could be me. Don't be tempted unless you want to become my servant.
Now, very similar to La Tunda, La Sihuepa is another shape-shifting woman who apparently has feet that are backwards. And apparently that is because she wants to confuse you so you can't tell if she's going or coming. This DR folklore story, again, is about a shape-shifting woman who lures men to bodies of water and in the woods to lead them to their demise. So if you think that you're going to be going into the woods as a male, I highly suggest that you be careful, especially if you're a womanizer, because these spirits are not playing with y'all.
La Sihuepa is said to have a beautiful appearance to some and a horrendous one to others. They are said to be short, with very long black hair, dark-skinned, with backwards feet, which make it so you can never tell what direction they're walking. Some believe they bring death. They are said to lure men into the forest, make love with them, and then kill them. According to legend, the only way to capture a Sihuepa is to hunt them in the night during the full moon with the black and white dog.
Now, another very well-known popular Latin folklore myth and story is going to be about duendes. Duendes are supposedly these little fairy-like or elf-like creatures that roam around in the woods, and they're usually not malevolent, but people have said that they have encountered them and then had horrible luck afterwards. If you've heard about duendes in your culture or in your Latin country, please leave it down in the comments and please share your story so we can gather more information and learn as a community.
So you guys have been asking this question, and let me elaborate. So in folklore of Spain, Portugal, Latin America, and the Philippines, it's a supernatural being or spirit that resembles a pixie or an imp. This book here, I really enjoyed this book. It's called The Mythical Creatures Bible. Has another great description, so you guys can take a pause and read it. So I hope this helps. I'm hoping to make more content with people who have claimed to have seen a duende before. But of course, depending on who you talk to, everyone has their own variation of a duende. I know when I grew up, growing up with my grandpa, he would describe them slightly different than this description, so it does vary.
So here we have another crazy video purported to show another kind of paranormal creature like some of the others I've shown on here. So as always, let's go ahead and take a closer look and discuss what this could be if this video is legitimate. Now obviously this video is very short, but the reaction is so dramatic and extreme it feels pretty legitimate to me. Let's go ahead and slow it down a little bit to examine and zoom in too. Now we only see this thing for a second, but slowed down, the movement seems pretty good to me, and it doesn't seem like any kind of animal that I can place it. Now I have a pretty good idea of what this could be based on the information in the Oldry family bestiary, but there is a note I want to make about it, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. The people who took this video referred to it as a duende, which, I'm Colombian on my father's side. I know the stories about those kinds of creatures. I do believe they are a type of elf or fae, similar to this hobgoblin shown here from the bestiary. They're also referred to as bogarts, hobs, house spirits. They have many names. These creatures tend to be at least very mischievous, but while benevolent interactions have been reported, it is strongly recommended against interacting with them in any way, because that mischievousness can become very dangerous very fast. It's also possible that this is something like an imp, that are often confused with elves, but these are much more malicious, monstrous, demonic entities. Either way, it's something I would recommend not messing around with, but if you're talking about imps, this is a much, much worse situation. You don't want to confuse these things.
All of the information that I have gathered, I leave it down in the description. So if there is something that is not right, please do not come for me, okay? Like I said, I am not above criticism, but some of these things, I know they're not 100% correct, but again, leave it in the comments so we can create a better sense of community, one, and two, so we can learn together. I completely agree with the original poster when it comes to that duende sighting. That reaction was so dramatic that it seemed extremely genuine, and the fact that you can clearly see a shadow in the floor as the duende goes past the threshold that the little boy is standing in front of. He wasn't making that up. He was genuinely scared. Now, the next popular folklore creature that we're going to get into is going to be the well-known Chupacabra. Now, a Chupacabra is, for lack of a better term, the Latin Bigfoot that stands about 5 feet tall and has a canine reptilian-like look to it that stalks people in the night. Not something I'd want to play with. But let's get into this next video where the original poster is going to give us more background.
Chupacabras. The Chupacabras is often described as a creature that stands about 3 to 4 feet tall, with a reptilian or canine appearance, sharp fangs, and large, black eyes. It is said to have leathery, grayish-green skin with spines or quills running along its back. The Chupacabras gained notoriety in the mid-1990s following a series of livestock deaths in Puerto Rico. The creature's name, which translates to goatsucker in Spanish, was derived from the way the animals were found, drained of blood and with puncture wounds on their necks. Sightings have since been reported in various parts of the Americas, but no definitive evidence has been found to prove its existence.
Now, the next one that we are going to get into, I have never heard of. So if I pronounce it wrong, again, please do not come for me in the comments. I'm doing my best here. I know that I may be Afro-Latino, but guess what? Spanish is my second language, okay? I'm working on it. And the next folklore creature that we're going to get into is La Cucuy. El Cucuy originates in Portugal and in Spain, but again, stretches across the Latin diaspora. And El Cucuy is a shape-shifting monster that likes to stalk people in the night. I don't know what it is with a lot of these Latin folklore creatures, but they like to get you at night, man. So pretty much just stay in the house. There's a reason why, again, across the diaspora, whether you are Latin or African, when them street lights come on, get in the house.
Who is El Cucuy? El Cucuy is a mystical ghost monster in Latin American folklore. In the legends of some countries, there are claims of similarity of El Cucuy with the boogeyman and Babi, a creature from Slavic folklore. The myth of El Cucuy originally originated in the countries of Portugal and Spain. El Cucuy is also known as Coco or Coca. According to one legend, people carved masks out of coconuts to scare naughty children. There is no generally accepted description of El Cucuy because different countries portray him differently, but it all boils down to the fact that this creature is very scary to look at. It is described as a shapeless figure or as a hairy monster that hides in closets or under beds and eats children, who misbehave when their parents force them to go to bed. El Cucuy is capable of acting as a vigilante, preying on people who have greatly offended a certain person. El Cucuy is very secretive and cautious, preferring not to give away his identity.
If you ever have a random man that decides to come to you in the middle of the night asking to braid your hair, tell his ass no, okay? Your god sister told you to tell his ass no. Don't do it, okay? Because most likely, that's going to be the end of you. The malevolent spirit that I'm referring to is going to be El Sombreron, and that is not anybody that you want to play with. Ladies, please be careful. These male spirits definitely play tricks on you. There are male tricksters out there. Don't fall for it. The legend of El Sombrero is about a, again, male spirit that goes around trying to seek himself out a wife. He is constantly looking for female and women lovers to take on. But because he is a spirit, I don't think he realizes he can do that. So he's claiming lives left and right. Don't let it be yours.
Let him braid your hair. He will make you his bride by throwing rocks and dirt in your food so that you starve and die. This is the legend of El Sombreron. Selena had big black eyes and long wavy hair. Everyone admired her. One evening, at about 6 in the afternoon, Selena felt unusually tired and started to drift off to sleep. She started to hear the most beautiful and hypnotizing melody and a very soothing voice that sang, "You are a white dove, white as a lemon blossom. If you don't give me your heart, I shall die from passion." No one else was able to hear that song, and it was as if it had been imprinted in her mind, because all Selena could think of was that song. She could concentrate on nothing else. Since that night, every single night, Selena happily awaited that music only she could hear. One night, she couldn't resist the curiosity to find out who was singing to her, and she peeked through her window. She was surprised to see a tiny man wearing a very shiny black boots with gold spurs and a very large sombrero that sung and danced playing his silver guitar below her window. Selena could not stop thinking of the little man. She would not eat, and when she tried, she said that weirdly, everything tasted like dirt, like rocks. It was disgusting. Now she only lived for the moment she would hear his voice again. It was like she was under a spell. Legend has it that El Sombreron is the devil himself. He seduces his victims with songs, visits their rooms at night to braid their hair with thin and impossible to detangle braids. He drives the women crazy with his songs and takes them as his brides and slowly unalives them so he can take their souls forever. When El Sombreron has found no victim to his liking, sometimes people find thin braids on their horses at their stables, which lets them know that El Sombreron is around and looking for a new soul to take as his bride. The neighbors realized what was happening and alerted Selena's parents to take her to a convent where she would be safe because that man was the devil and he could not enter its sacred ground. So Selena's parents, in a hurry, took her to the convent, but it was no use, for the Sombreron followed her. She was so bewitched by his song that even in the convent, she grew sadder and sadder each day, missing his songs and melodies. Finally, beautiful young Selena couldn't stand her sadness anymore and died on the day of Saint Cecilia. Her body was taken home for the funeral, but to everyone's shock, that night a wail suddenly could be heard, a sad cry that could only be described as supernatural and hair-raising. It was El Sombreron, who had arrived to serenade his beloved and announced that he was coming to collect his new bride. Those who were able to see him say that thick tears rolled down while he sang for his beloved Selena, and that every year on the day of Saint Cecilia, he is seen near her grave and a sweet voice is heard singing. El Sombreron never forgets the women he has loved and taken. Beware of the sweet sounds of a melody that appears in the dead of night, for it can be El Sombreron choosing you as his next bride.
So if you hear the almost lullaby or angelic-like music or singing coming from a man outside of your home, that may be El Sombrero, and that is not anybody you want to let in. Keep those doors locked and closed. Don't let him in. Don't go outside. Don't acknowledge him at all. Now, this next folklore creature that we're going to get into, I'm sure I'm going to butcher the name, but please do not come for me. And that would be Masakorman. And apparently he is a Jumbi, which would be a demon or a very dark spirit. In this South American folklore, he allegedly likes to stalk the people of the night, invoking fear and just downright chaos when he's around.
The remote villages of Guyana, there exists a tale that chills the bones and makes even the bravest souls shudder, the legend of the Masakoramon. This sinister being, a creature woven from the darkest threads of folklore, haunts the shadows of the South American wilderness, a relentless force that evokes dread and fear. The Masakoramon is whispered about in hushed tones around campfires, a monstrous entity that emerges from the depths of the dense jungle to wreak havoc upon those who dare to encroach upon its domain. Its name strikes terror into the hearts of the superstitious and the curious alike, its story a haunting melody that has been passed down through generations. The Masakoramon is believed to be a cursed soul, one who once walked among the living but has been transformed into a malevolent spirit, driven by a hunger for blood and a thirst for revenge. Its form is a grotesque amalgamation of man and beast, a wretched creature that defies the laws of nature. In the moonlit darkness of the Guyanese rainforest, the Masacoramon appears as a towering figure, its body covered in matted, mossy hair, reminiscent of the damp undergrowth. Its limbs are gnarled and powerful, capable of swift and silent movement. Its eyes, cold and unfeeling, gleam with an eerie malevolence, reflecting an insatiable appetite for suffering. The Masacoramon's existence is said to be a result of an ancient curse, a pact with the supernatural forces that govern the wild, untamed wilderness. It is believed to be a guardian of the forest, punishing those who dare to harm the sacred lands it protects. Some say it was once a hunter, consumed by the darkness of the jungle, transformed into an instrument of vengeance. The method of attack employed by the Masacoramon is both gruesome and terrifying. It is said to enter the minds of its victims, inducing madness and despair, compelling them to commit unspeakable acts of violence and self-harm. Those who fall under its influence are doomed to a life of torment, forever haunted by the malevolent spirit. The villagers of Guyana live in perpetual fear of the Masacoramon. They dare not enter the heart of the rainforests, for they know that to do so is to tempt the wrath of this relentless creature. Those who have encountered it and lived to tell the tale do so with quivering voices, their eyes haunted by the horrors they've witnessed. In the depths of the Guyanese wilderness, the Masacoramon embodies the primal fears of the uncharted and unknown. It serves as a reminder that there are forces lurking in the heart of the rainforest, entities that defy reason and strike terror into the hearts of those who dare to venture too close to the darkness that dwells within.
Now, the next folklore that we're going to get into is going to be about the Pistaco. And if you've seen the Supernaturals, you've seen the episode on this. But going against vampire folklore in general, they are not your traditional vampires. You know, the ones that suck blood and leave your drain dry and have no blood left in you? Yeah, no, they're not like that. These vampire-like creatures that originated in Peru are known again throughout the diaspora. And the next video that shows a small clip from there that gets into it about who and what the Pistaco are and how they came about.
The Pistaco is a vampire legend heard in Peru. They are vampires that don't suck blood, but they suck the fat out of humans. I think they were featured in a Supernatural episode, but the origin behind this vampire is horrific. The Spanish used to take indigenous people, murder them, and then use their fat to make things like soap. There are stories from like 1571 where indigenous people were afraid to deliver firewood to Spanish homes because their fat would be used for some cure for a disease. Pistaco comes from the word pistay, which means to slice the throat or cut into pieces.
Have you ever heard of the tale of El Silbón? El Silbón folklore goes back to Venezuela and about a man who was very wealthy in his town, and one day he decided to go home and get into it with his father and do something that he shouldn't have done. And because his abuelo was a brujo himself, he decided to handle business in the honor of his son.
Have you ever heard of the Venezuelan urban legend of El Silbón? El Silbón is a legendary figure from Venezuelan folklore. According to the legend, Silbón was a wealthy and privileged young man who lived on a ranch with his father, known as El Silbón Sr. One day, Silbón returned home drunk after a night of debauchery and demanded that his father cook him a meal. His father, disgusted by his behavior, refused and chastised him for his excesses, and in a fit of rage, Silbón killed his father in cold blood. As punishment for his heinous act, Silbón was cursed by his grandfather. The curse turned him into an eternal wandering spirit, doomed to carry the bones of his father in a bag and whistle hauntingly throughout the night. El Silbón is depicted as a tall, gaunt figure dressed in ragged clothes, carrying a bag containing the bones of his father. He is said to emit a foul stench of decay, and his eyes glow with an eerie light. El Silbón's most notable characteristic is his whistling, which is believed to be heard in the distance as a warning to those who encounter him. The legend of El Silbón serves as a cautionary tale against moral decay, excessive drinking, and disrespect towards parents. It is said that if you hear his whistle, it means he's close by, and it's a sign of impending doom or misfortune. To this day, the legend of El Silbón continues to be passed down through generations, captivating the imaginations of Venezuelans and serving as a reminder of the consequences of one's actions.
Today we're talking about El Silbón, Ciguanaba, the Devil, and La Llorona. Now what do they all have in common? Well, Green Star Goddess asked the question, are there any folktales about men who get punished for being womanizers? The answer is yes, absolutely. Starting in Colombia and Venezuela, we have El Silbón, the Whistler. He's a young man who womanizes constantly. He tells women he loves them, gets what he wants from them, and then kicks them to the curb. His father scolds him for this, and he ends up killing his father. Unfortunately for him, his grandpa's a brujo and curses him. And to this day, El Silbón walks the earth looking for other men who are just like him. Siguanaba is a beautiful woman who from behind looks normal. You get closer to her, she turns around, reveals she has a horse face, and eats you. And if the story of La Siguanaba sounds familiar, it's sure there are many similar stories all across Latin America, however most of them involve the devil. Depending where you're from, La Llorona also goes after womanizers, because she herself was a victim of a womanizer. Moral of the story is, if you womanize, you might get murdered by an evil spirit. Which I gotta say, kinda seems well deserved.
I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely enjoyed making this series. One, because it's giving me a chance to brush up on my Spanish, because like I said, Spanish is my second language with my father being Dominican. And two, because it's a part of my culture. I appreciate learning about my culture like anyone else. But again, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. If you are wanting to get me to elaborate a little bit more on some of the different folklore stories and creatures that I went over today, or new ones, leave it down in the comments for your girl. And as always, I have to leave this disclaimer. If you guys are getting messages from different people on different platforms in regards to services or products, please block, report, and delete in that order. That is a scammer. I am a legitimate spiritualist. I am not going to reach out to you. So if you are looking for me for any readings or any products, please make sure that you're getting in contact with me on my Etsy. That is the only place that you can contact me legitimately. My DMs are closed. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up because I gotta get into Asian folklore next. So if you guys are interested in seeing that, make sure that you guys stay tuned for that video. But as always, make sure that you drink your water, mind your business, and stay prayed up and protected. And as always, Luna loves you.